Welcome to Killer Cove. I'm back with another story for you guys, and today it's going to be a little more twisted than last time. So we're not talking urban legends. This week we're talking about the female Hannibal Lecter, also known as Katherine Knight. Katherine Knight. All I have to say for right now is beware of this story because it is very intense. Growing up, Katherine Knight was a product of an affair. Her mother had cheated on her husband, and Katherine was the receipt, basically. So growing up, Katherine didn't have the greatest at-home life because her father was a very abusive alcoholic. Her mother just kind of sat there and took it, like she didn't try to fight back or anything. Despite her getting all the horrible treatment that she was getting at home, she was actually a bully at school. Which, I mean, those two don't really add up, because most of the times when you get treated bad at home, like usually you're quiet and kind of like get made fun of at school. But no, it was the opposite for her. She took her anger out on her classmates, and younger classmates at that too. At the age of 15, Katherine actually dropped out of high school to chase after her dream job. And her dream job was to work at the slaughterhouse in town. And if you don't know what the slaughterhouse is, it's basically where you go and you chop up the animals, like the cows and the pigs and everything, to make them into our meats that we get, like hamburgers and bacon and all that stuff. But like, why is that your dream job, to like cut things and see all the blood? That's just so gross to me. After working at the slaughterhouse for a couple years, she actually finds someone named David Kettle. David and Katherine's relationship was not very smooth sailing because she was very, very dominant and he was a drunk. So he would try to abuse her, but she would be like, I can fight back. She would not back down. So she would fight back as well. So he kind of just got used to it and he was like, okay, I get it. You can fight me back, I'll stop. Well, years later, it's 1974 now, and they ended up getting married. And it wasn't a fairy tale like, getting down on one knee and being like, will you marry me? It was a drunken night, and he actually was kind of forced to marry her because she was just like, you better marry me. Like, you better marry me right now. Right now. So he was like, okay. So they went and got married. After they had gotten married, they did what married people did, and, they got a little freaky. They got a little freaky 3 times, and he actually wanted to go to sleep. She was like, no, I don't want to go to bed. I want to stay freaky with you, Well, he ended up falling asleep, and that just set something off in Katherine's mind, and she just got so mad that he wanted to go to sleep. And as he was sleeping, her rage just got incredibly strong to the point where she actually strangled him. When David was able to wake up and realize what was happening, he actually fought her off and was able to get out of it and kind of just run. I mean, he was just strangled. That would have been a red flag for me. However, for David, it wasn't, because he stayed with her, and actually they stayed with each other for 10 more years. During those 10 years of marriage, they ended up having 2 girls. The 2 girls that they had, their names were Melissa Ann and Natasha Marie. Their marriage also never got better. Her mother even talked to David privately and was like, you need to get out of there. Like, she's crazy. If you set her off good enough, she will kill you. You need to take your girls and run, because there is some loose screws up in that girl's head. Well, little does, Miss Mama know that Katherine literally strangled him whenever he just wanted to go to sleep. He was like, oh, it's okay, that's my wife, I love her, da-da-da-da. It's like, dude, come on. So during their marriage, David got very, very, he was kind of over Katherine and the way she was and how jealous she got, and just, she was crazy. And he just was over that. So he was still an alcoholic, and he also had many affairs with her. One night, whenever she found out that he had left her in the middle of the night with the girls home alone, she got so mad that, I don't know why she did this. It's just because she's crazy. She took her newborn baby, which was Melissa Ann. She only had the one at the time. She took that baby, put it on train tracks, knowing the scheduled train was supposed to arrive at the tracks, and just keep driving. It wouldn't stop and be like, oh, there's a baby right there. No, she wanted that baby to get murdered, okay? She knew the time that the train was scheduled to go But she didn't care. She put the baby on there. I'm talking about full cowboy style, okay? She put the baby on the train tracks and just left it there to die. However, something happened and the train didn't arrive at the scheduled time, so the baby was just fine. But there were people there that witnessed it, and as they were witnessing it, she was like fighting them off with an axe that she had stolen because she did not want them to interfere with what was going on. After all these incidents that she had, she was actually placed in a psych ward, which didn't really do much because they only put her there for 2 months, and they also diagnosed her with depression and many other diagnoses. However, they still let her go after 2 months, in spite of her telling the people there that she wanted to murder the auto repairman that fixed David's car because it was a way that he could leave her. Like, if I worked at that psych ward and she told me, like, look, I want to go kill that man because he fixed my man's car and now my man can leave me, and that's just unacceptable. Like, I would be like, okay, that's so, that's good information. And I would look at the doctor and be like, she can't leave. I mean, she tried to kill her baby, hello. Like, that's crazy. So after all of that, you would think David would learn his lesson and be like, dang, this girl is crazy, let me get out of here. Well, no, he still took her back. 10 years went on, and they ended up having their second child, which I spoke about earlier in the video, Natasha Marie. They ended up having her, and by this time, it was March 1980. Well, David finally got fed up because her anger got worse and worse, and she just got more and more crazier over time, that the last red flag that he seen was her hitting him over the head and knocking him out with a frying pan, and also Catherine constantly putting knives up against his throat because he wasn't doing what she wanted him to do. So the years went on, and now it's 1986, where she had found her second husband, not husband, but her second boyfriend, which his name was also David Saunders. The relationship started off really good, and she wasn't being all crazy. Like, they actually enjoyed being around each other, but we know with her track history, that wouldn't last very long. So as the years went on, her and David ended up having a daughter, and they named her Sarah Saunders, and this was in 1988. It never said that David Saunders was ever mean to her or had affairs on her. However, just from her recent experiences with David Kettle, she just was nothing. She was just crazy. Like, there's no reason for her to act the way she acted because she was just literally insane. After the good parts of her marriage with David Saunders, it got bad. She took it to the extreme of she thought that he was cheating on her, which he wasn't. He just liked to have his own space, and she was not about that because she was like, dude, you're cheating on me. I know it. Like, you have another secret life. And he was like, no, I don't. Like, I love you, but I just like to have my space. I like to go hang out with my boys. But she didn't understand that. She went to the extreme of taking the puppy that they had just got, which was 2 months old, and she held it up and was like, do you want me to show you what would happen to you if you had an affair on me? And he was like, yo, like, put the puppy down, okay? What are you doing with the puppy? This crazy girl, having the puppy in her hand, took a knife and slit the dog's throat and said, this is what I'm capable of, so I dare you to have an affair on me. Saunders, get out of there, okay? That's crazy. Like, when I read that, I was like, no, like, that's a puppy. Like, how could you kill a puppy? They were so cute. But she did, okay? She killed that puppy. Right in his face. And I'm just like, David, you better run. You better get out of there. Go run, okay? So, not years, because he took the hint that she was obviously crazy. It was only a couple months after his daughter was born that he got out of there and left that crazy girl. Because she slit the puppy's throat. She also changed up her knockout ways. She used an iron to knock out David Saunders, and she also stabbed him in the stomach with a pair of scissors. It didn't say why, but just from experiences of reading her story, he was probably just leaving to go get a carton of milk, and she thought he was cheating on her, honestly, because this is how crazy this girl is. After David Saunders left her, she went around and she tried a couple things. She tried to date this guy and this guy and that guy. She was just trying to find a man that she didn't have the urge to hit with a frying pan, I guess. In 1990, she found a man named John Price, and they had a good relationship at first. They were really happy together. They even had a son, and they named him Eric Price. Well, Things were pretty smooth sailing. Everything was happy. She was happy. He was happy. The only thing that she didn't like is that he wouldn't fully move in with her because he kept his own little crib and then she had her crib that she wanted to like merge and move in together. But he was like, no, like I just got out of a bad relationship a couple years ago with my prior wife, and I don't want to commit to something like that, but I am here with you. Like, I will spend the night with you and stuff, but moving my stuff over here is just not going to work for me right now. Well, she started throwing around the word marriage, and she was like, well, what about you marrying me? And he was like, did you not just hear what I said? I just got out of a bad relationship, and I'm not looking forward to move in with you, let alone marry you. I don't like marriage. Like, he had no plans in remarrying because of what happened to him in his last relationship. Well, after the denial of marrying her, she went off the deep end. Again, shocker, not so much. After he had denied her marriage, he was just shocked of the way she acted because she became more violent and she always threatened him. She even went to the point where she would she had stolen stuff from his job, or he took something home from the job, which he was allowed to, but she made it into like he stole it. She even called his boss and she was like, yo, I got stuff and I know he stole it from your job site and I got the pictures to prove it, so you need to fire him. So they it said that he had gotten fired, but he had gotten the job back afterwards. But it got to the point where like his friends didn't even want to be around him because she was there. And that's how mean she was, not only to John, but to everyone around her. It just got to the point where she was just a completely different crazy. Like, she was crazy in the beginning, but this crazy was like on a whole nother planet. Like, she just became someone who he didn't even recognize. Nobody did. John ended up getting a restraining order from her because of how he would be stalked by her. She wouldn't leave him alone. She would always like show up unannounced. And they had a thing where they would be like on and off. Like, they were together, but he was at his own house. And she would show up like 12 o'clock at night sometimes and just be like in this, this mood to be like, I'm sorry, I love you, let's come on, just move in with me. And he was like, no, I don't want to, leave me alone, you're crazy. I got a restraining order on you, like, get out of here, like, you're crazy. Well, the year is now 2000 and it is February 29th. February 29th, Catherine had went over to John's house unannounced at 11 o'clock at night. His kids were not at the house, they were at their grandparents' house. So the only person in the house was John himself. Well, as she came in, he looked at her and he was like, yo, like, what are you doing here? And she's like, I miss you, I want to hang out with you, and I want to spend the night, please just let me spend the night. So he was like, yeah, sure, whatever, I don't care, just I'm going to sleep, I have work in the morning. And she's like, that's fine, I just want to be with you. Ugh. So the night goes on, they get a little freaky. Then she had actually spiked his water because he was like, I'm thirsty, and she's like, I got you, I'll go get you some water. Well, she spiked his water to where it wasn't enough to make him completely knocked out, but it was enough to make him drowsy. She didn't know the amount of drugs that she would need to completely knock him out. So with that, she only gave him half of the dose that a man that size would need to be knocked out. After she had given him his water, hours later he had passed out, and this is where the twisted part begins. It's the next day now, February 30th, 7 a.m. Work is wondering where John is because he never showed up to work, and they were very nervous for him because they said that Catherine had threatened his life and that he was in fear for his life. 30 minutes go past and he still hasn't arrived, so the work called his neighbors and said, hey, is John's car there? And they said yes, and they were like, can you go and check to see if John is in the house because he isn't at work yet and we need to make sure he's okay, it's very urgent. With the knowledge that the neighbors have of him and Catherine's relationship, they run over there to make sure he's okay. And as they go over there, they see blood on the outside of the door on the doorknob. And immediately they knew what happened. They either knew that John had died or he's seriously injured in the house, bleeding out. So they end up calling the police, and the police knock on the door, calling out John's name. No one answers, so they immediately kick in the door. And as they kick in the door, they see nothing but blood everywhere. all over the living room, all over the walls. Blood splatter analysis says that the way it happened was John had allegedly got stabbed in the back while he was sleeping and drugged on the bed. When he woke up because he wasn't drugged enough, he tried to run away from Catherine. As he was running, he finally made it to the front door, but it was too late because Catherine was right behind him following him, trying to chase him down before he opens up the front door. Catherine approaches him. He realized that this was the last night that he was going to be alive. She then threw him on the ground and began to stab him in the front of the chest now, where he would then bleed out after being stabbed 57 times. Police reports said that as the police were walking in the house trying to find where the body of John Price was, all they could see was blood, and they also seen a big platter of food on the table with names written next to the plate of food. The names written down on the piece of paper by the plates were the name of their children, John's 2 girls and the little boy that they shared together, Eric. As they found that strange, they went and started walking down the hallway following the blood trail still, and as they were following the blood trail, the family room in the back was blocked by the sheet. As police moved the sheet out of the way so they can enter the room, they had felt a cold, wet sensation on their arm. They looked down and they seen that their arms were now covered in blood. As they looked up, they realized that it wasn't a sheet, and it was the skin of John Price. When they got through the door, John Price was sitting there, headless, skinless, kicked up on the chair with his legs crossed, holding a can of soda. They then realized that they had to find Mr. Price's head. Looking further through the house as they make their way towards the kitchen again, they see that Mr. Price's head is in a boiling pot on the stove at 122 degrees Fahrenheit. They then come to realize that that plate of food that had been left out for the kids with the notes by them was not steak. It was body parts from John Price. After they had found John Price's body, his head boiling on the stove, and the feast made for the children, they then followed another blood trail that would lead them to Catherine Knight, who was behind the couch with a faint pulse, barely hanging on. The police then called the ambulance to transfer Catherine to a hospital to see if she'll make it. When she got there to the hospital, they were able to save her life, and when the cops asked her what happened, she told them everything. She told him how she stabbed him 57 times, skinned him, cooked his body parts, put his head in a boiling pot on the stove, and then planned to feed him to the kids. She also talked about how she tried her plate of food and didn't like it, so she threw it out the window for the dogs. Once she realized what was going on and what she had done, she then began to take sleeping pills, not because of how bad she felt and she wanted to end it all, but because she didn't want to face the consequences of her actions. She was then arrested for the murder of John Price. The year is now 2001, March 2nd, and she's on trial for the murder of John Price. She then pleads not guilty for the charges pending against her for the murder of John Price. The courts immediately dismiss it and sentence her to life in prison with no possibility of parole. The first woman in Australia to ever get that type of sentencing. In 2006, she tried to go back to the courts to have another trial for her sentencing because she talked about how it was too harsh and that she was insane back then. The courts immediately denied it because they know the horrors that she had done and that she never deserves to get out of prison. To this day, she's still in prison with no possibility of parole in Silverwater Women's Correctional Facility, where she will be for the rest of her life. And that was the story of Catherine Knight. This was honestly the most twisted murder history I have ever read in my life. I mean, she literally skinned this man, cooked him, and was proceeding to feed him to her kids while he was sitting in the TV room with the curtain of his skin, with his feet crossed, propped up like he's watching TV and drinking a soda. She should never be able to get out of prison. Well, all I have to say about this, stay safe. If you see red flags, leave immediately. Okay, seriously, like, it's not even funny. Like, leave immediately. Because you never know someone's capability. Because from the beginning of the story, it started off shaky, but the ending was just unbelievable. So stay safe. If you like this type of content, make sure you hit subscribe, put on the post notifications so you never miss a video, and I will see you next time. Thank you so much for tuning in.